Dave. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's turn on the prayer book, page 5. With all enemies that hate me, hinders who harm me, and those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience foremost, may all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness, be free of suffering, and quickly attain precious, unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. With all enemies who hate me, hinders who harm me, and those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience foremost, may all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness, be free of suffering, and quickly attain precious, unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. With all enemies who hate me, hinders who harm me, and those who obstruct my liberation and omniscience foremost, may all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness, be free of suffering, and quickly attain precious, unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. To this end I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until Buddhahood. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue until death. I apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue from today until tomorrow, this time. All sentient beings equal to the ends of space take refuge in the nature of all the body, speech, minds, qualities, and activities of those thus gone in the 10 directions and 3 times, the wellspring of the 84,000 heaps of Dharma, the sovereign of all the noble Sanghas, the glorious and holy kind root and lineage gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Yidam's mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and guardians with the wisdom eye. We take refuge in the glorious and holy kind root and lineage gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Yidam's mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. We take refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and with the wisdom eye. We take refuge in the glorious and holy kind root and gurus. We take refuge in the assembly of deities in the Yidam's mandala. We take refuge in the Buddha Bhagavans. We take refuge in the holy Dharmas. We take refuge in the noble Sanghas. Refuge in the assembly of Viras, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, and guardians with the wisdom eye. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. In the Dharma and assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. Just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening, and in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind. And in each and every training thus, step by step, I'll train myself like so. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. In the Dharma and assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. Just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening. And in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind. And in each and every training thus, step by step, I'll train myself like so. Till I reach the heart of awakening, I take refuge in the Buddhas all. In the Dharma assembly of Bodhisattvas too I take refuge. just as all Sugatas of the past brought to birth the mind of awakening, and in each and every training of Bodhisattvas step by step did dwell. Just so for the benefit of beings I too bring to birth awakened mind, and in each and every training thus step by step I'll train myself like so. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent I take refuge till I come to full awakening. By the merit of my deeds like generosity, may I achieve Buddha for beings' benefit. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent, I take refuge, come to full awakening. By the merit of my deeds like generosity, may I achieve Buddhahood for beings' benefit. In the Buddha, Dharma, and assembly excellent, I take refuge till I come to full awakening. By the merit of my deeds like generosity, may I achieve Buddhahood for beings' benefit. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. May all mother sentient beings equal to space have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness free of suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion to near and far. By prostrating, offering, and confessing thus, by rejoicing, urging, supplicating too, any little virtue that I have amassed, all I dedicate full awakening. This ground daubed with fragrant water and with flowers strewn is adorned by Meru, four lands, by sun and moon. Seeing this to be a Buddha field, I offer it. May all beings experience this utterly pure land. Om Guru Ratna Mandala Pudza Mega Samudra Saparana Samaye Ahom. And now the little blue book, the Bodhisattva practices together. Homage to Lokeshvara. I pay constant homage through my three doors to my supreme teacher and protector Chenrezig, who, while seeing all phenomena and lack coming and going, makes single-minded effort for the good of living beings. Perfect Buddha's source of all well-being and happiness arise from accomplishing the excellent teachings, and this depends on knowing the practices, so I will explain the practices of Bodhisattvas. Having gained this rare ship, freedom and fortune, here think and meditate unwaveringly night and day, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Attached to your loved ones, you're stirred up like water. Hating your enemies, you burn like fire. In the darkness of confusion, you forget what to adopt and discard. Give up your homeland. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. By avoiding bad objects, disturbing emotions gradually decrease. Without distraction, virtuous activities naturally increase. With clarity of mind, conviction in the teachings arises. Cultivate seclusion. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Loved ones who have long kept company will part. Created with difficulty will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of this life. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. When you keep their company, your three poisons increase. Your activities of hearing, thinking, and meditating decline, and they make you lose your love and compassion. Give up bad friends. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Bound himself in the jail of cyclic existence, what worldly god can give you protection? Therefore, when you seek refuge, take refuge in the three jewels which will not betray you. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. The subduer said, all the unbearable suffering of bad rebirths is the fruit of wrongdoing. Therefore, even at the cost of your own life, never do wrong. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Like dew on the tip of a blade of grass, pleasures of the three worlds last only a while and then vanish. Aspire to the never-changing supreme state of liberation. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When your mothers who've loved you since time without beginning are suffering, what use is your own happiness? Therefore, to free, limitless living beings, develop the altruistic intention. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. All suffering comes from the wish for your own happiness. Perfect Buddhas are born from the thought to help others. Therefore, exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone, out of strong desire, steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him your body, possessions, and all your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone tries to cut off your head when you haven't done the slightest thing wrong, out of compassion take all his misdeeds upon yourself. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if someone broadcasts kinds of unpleasant remarks about you throughout the 3,000 worlds, in return, with a loving mind, speak of his good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though someone may deride and speak bad words about you in a public gathering, looking on him as a spiritual teacher, bow to him with respect. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Even if a person for whom you've cared like your own child regards you as an enemy, cherish him specially like a mother does her child who is stricken with sickness. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If an equal or inferior person disparages you out of pride, place him as you would your spiritual teacher with respect on the crown of your head. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you lack what you need and are constantly disparaged, afflicted by dangerous sickness and spirits, without discouragement take on the misdeeds and the pain of all living beings. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Though you become famous and many bow to you, and you gain riches to equal Vaishravanas, see that worldly fortune is without essence and be unconceited. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. While the enemy of your own anger is unsubdued, though you conquer external foes, they will only increase. Therefore, with the militia of love and compassion, subdue your own mind. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Sensual pleasures, like salt water, the more you indulge, the more thirst increases. Abandon at once those things which breed clinging attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Whatever appears is your own mind. Your mind from the start was free from fabricated extremes. Understanding this, do not take to mind inherent signs of subject and object. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When you encounter attractive objects, though they seem beautiful like a rainbow in summer, don't regard them as real and give up attachment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. All forms of suffering are like a child's death in a dream. Holding illusory appearances to be true makes you weary. Therefore, when you meet with disagreeable circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. When those who want enlightenment must give even their body, there is no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being, so wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your ethical discipline. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, towards all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Seeing even hearers and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own good, strive as if to put out a fire on their head. For the sake of all beings, make enthusiastic effort the source of all good qualities. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding. Cultivate concentration which surpasses the four formless absorptions. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Since the five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means, cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive three spheres as real. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner but not act as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. If through the influence of disturbing emotions you point out the faults of another bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel, make hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration, bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words which are unpleasant to others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Habitual disturbing emotions are to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once, as soon as they arise. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. To remove the suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. For all who want to train on the bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones on the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and treatises. Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I have relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent, so I think these bodhisattva practices are without error. However, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells in either extreme, not in the world nor in peace. Okay, good morning, everyone. Khenpo Monlam is in Madison, Wisconsin today. He's visiting Kenshin Koncho Gyaltsen, who's like the senior Khenpo in the Drikung, and he's been here teaching, as you will know. So this morning we just have a little brief time because we have our annual, one of our annual meetings at 11. But I wanted to point out a couple of things that I thought would be helpful and of interest. First, this is from the Tantra containing the actual meaning of the great perfection. By following the elephant's footprints, the elephant is found. If one tries to find the king of wisdom, first one has to go with ordinary mind. Through ordinary mind, if one searches for the meaning, then one definitely finds the self-awareness wisdom king. But not grasping at finding this wisdom king is freedom from clinging. Whatever is free from clinging is not ordinary clinging mind. It is rather self-occurring wisdom body. Not originating from ordinary mind, Buddha is found. The Dharma is so remarkable because it's this vast path, and it's got all the tools, all the techniques, you might say, that are necessary, really, for whatever you want. It's said that when a pickpocket sees a saint, all he sees are pockets. So it's our motivation. It is what we're really wanting. And like the Khenpo said last weekend, if you want happiness, you can find happiness. If you want peace of mind, you can find peace of mind. If you regard the teacher as a bodhisattva, you become a bodhisattva. If you regard the teacher as someone just completely self-liberated, a conqueror of all the negative emotions, you become an arhat. If you regard the teacher as a Buddha, you become a Buddha. It's all up to us. Buddhism is this radical looking within. Tinley Norber Rinpoche, and then the quotes from the sutra requested by Jewel Crown, some sutra I don't know. Compared with hearing and contemplating for many eons, meditating for a single day on the meaning of Dharma has greater merit. The reason is that meditation brings freedom from the path of birth and death. Thus, as said, remember this and sustain mindfulness. So the greatness of this is that you can think it's really all about realization. You know, the Buddha's first noble truth, what's the first thing he said upon teaching? Was that our ordinary samsaric life, our unenlightened life, is one of dissatisfaction, going from tremendous suffering to just bewilderment. But there's a path out of that. Buddha had one disciple who came to him and was very frustrated. He said, I've been around here for a while, and my meditation is just getting nowhere. I'm just more and more confused. And the Buddha took out a string and tied a knot, and then tied a knot on top of that one, I think eight knots. And he handed the ball to him and said, how do you undo that? Do you just start pulling at the threads because you want desperately to be free? Or do you have to untie the outermost one first, and then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, and eventually there's complete freedom? So, well, you have to do it in the proper order. And that's it. We have so many, and yet for us, because this is, if you're like me, this, culturally we have a basic cultural support traditionally for spiritual work. But the detail of the Buddhists is just amazing. The whole thing is about practicality. Buddha said, my teachings are like a finger pointing at the full moon. But don't mistake the finger for the moon. In other words, all of Buddha's teachings are provisional, you might say. Sometimes they're termed as being absolute also, but that absolute is also a concept, so therefore it's provisionally absolute. We're in a situation, that we have created by our own mind habits, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. The habit is so strong that we take birth in this form. Think about that, how ultimately deeply creative it is. And so too, the thought streams that are arising in our minds again and again and again. And those thoughts cloud our realization, our experience of the nature of our mind. And Buddha said it's in the nature of the mind that is Buddha. That is where all liberation is. So how do we penetrate that? And we can see it, we're walking around. Someone gave us the name, whatever it was, in my case, Frank, at birth. I've been walking around repeating Frank for years. Everybody who sees me repeats Frank. I go into a courtroom, what's your name? Frank. Frank takes on this kind of solid reality that's not really there. It's very useful. We don't want to throw it away. It gets really confusing. You don't have any names. Everybody banging around into each other. You got to get your Social Security check somehow. So it's useful. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we give it a reality that it doesn't have, it makes problems for us. So, I can have the best mood in the world. I can be walking down the street amongst people that I've never seen, never known. And some strange person will say, there's Frank, that jerk. Am I remembering my true nature at that moment? Or am I all stuck in Frankhood? And that's what we do. So the Buddhists express this as dharmas, this world of phenomena, the scientific world that is revealed through science and that we are aware of through our senses, emotions, everything. These are called dharmas with a small d. It just means phenomena or appearances. But the genius of this is that in the midst of all of those dharmas, the Buddha taught those appearances which are lead us towards a realization of our true nature. And those are dharmas with a capital D. So Buddha's teachings are all called dharma. And that's why Tinley Norbu Rinpoche said, compared with hearing and contemplating for many eons, isn't that what we've been doing? We're thinking, we're pondering things. Everyone's trying to be happy. For eons. Compared to that, meditating for a single day on the meaning of Dharma has greater merit. The reason is that meditation brings freedom from the path of birth and death. You can't just meditate. The motivation is like at our core. What are we doing it for? So, the teachings are completely helpful. And it comes from a faith, and faith, not a blind faith, but a confidence. But this isn't some sort of stupid confidence. It's based on reason, it's based on our experience, it's based on our exploration, it's based on exploring our doubts. We're not throwing doubts away. This deep exploration is exactly what's needed. And it shows us the path. How do we untie those outer knots to get into the next knot, the next knot, the next knot? But of course, you can see the faith that has to be there, because I'm just tying another knot. Untying another knot just seems like these knots are endless. So the teachings are there, and the teachings are actually our true nature, but appearing in a way that is even helpful to our delusive mind. And this is extremely important. The teachings are sometimes called there are the conventional teachings, the relative teachings, and then the absolute teachings. And one of these great masters in medieval India, Nagarjuna, said that the conventional teachings are more important than the absolute teachings, because it's through the method of the conventional that we come to the absolute, to the teachings, beyond teachings. This introduction to a book about Buddha Amitabha, written by Taitetsu Uno, was, D.T. Suzuki. This is an introduction to a book on the Buddha of Infinite Light, Buddha Amitabha, written by D.T. Suzuki, who was one of the pioneers of bringing Buddhism to America. I think the first Buddhist teacher, there were all sorts of interesting kind of tendrils of Buddhism coming towards the West. Starting with William Jones, who was a colonial administrator living in Calcutta, the British in the 1700s. And he was a brilliant man, and he actually translated Sanskrit. He learned Sanskrit. He was the first European to do that. And so he started he started translating some Buddhist texts, but he didn't even distinguish between Buddhism and what we call Hinduism, just these Sanskrit texts. And these were actually translated into French then also. And Ralph Waldo Emerson read some of those early French translations in French. So there were these kind of teachings kind of seeping into the country. But the first big thing was in the 1890s, I think 1896, can't remember. This World Exposition in Chicago. And for the first time, there was a qualified Buddhist teacher in America. And that was a Japanese man who came. And he had as his translator one of his students, D.T. Suzuki. And D.T. Suzuki later went on to become a professor and writing all sorts of things about the perfection of wisdom, Zen Buddhism, all sorts of things. That wasn't his book. No, that was a common guy. a guy who lived in Minnesota where I lived. Yeah. Suzuki, we have such interesting connections with him because he was giving lectures at Columbia University as a guest lecturer in the early 1950s, 1950, 1951. And the man who founded the Rochester Zen Center went to some of those lectures and was having all sorts of personal problems, was actually thinking about suicide, was just miserable. He had been a very successful businessman. He had been the court reporter, a court reporter at the Nuremberg war crime trials after World War II, where they hanged the Nazis. And then he was also at a court reporter in Japan for the war crime trials in Tokyo after World War II also. And he was struck in his personal agitations of the difference in attitude between the Germans and the Japanese. The Japanese, who knows how sincere, but they seem to be expressing regret over bad things they had done. Whereas the German idea was, well, no, we didn't know anything about that. Who are those guys? So he was kind of curious by that. And so he went to these lectures with D.T. Suzuki. And the next thing you knew, he was kind of desperate. He went to Japan and was there for 13 years, training with Zen teachers, eventually coming back here. So we have this interesting connection. These are like, very, very recent for us in a historic way. So Taitetsu Uno is a Japanese man, professor at Smith College, who's passed away. And he was a young man in Japan and was thrown into an existential crisis when his best friend committed suicide unexpectedly. It just completely turned his world upside down. He was very close to this person. And then eventually came to discover his family's tradition of Pure Land Buddhism. It's especially focused on Buddha Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. Well, D.T. Suzuki, at the end of his life, he had been a Zen practitioner, but then he became practicing in the Pure Land tradition himself. And he made the interesting statement that although the Zen types are often very highly intellectual and very articulate, and the Pure Land types tend to be more towards the peasant class in Japan, very simple people practicing very simply. He said there are more cases of deeply enlightened people among the Pure Land than there are with Zen. And this kind of upset, our American prejudice because we're also college educated and so smart, right? Anyway, so this is Taitetsu Uno's introduction to D.T. Suzuki's book about the Buddha of Infinite Light. So this is Taitetsu Uno. Buddhism speaks of 84,000 paths to supreme enlightenment. That number, 84,000, symbolizes the countless ways that can lead us to the world of liberation, freedom, and peace. Among them is the Pure Land path, prepared especially for ordinary mortals like you and me. The significance of the number 84,000 is suggested in a terse poem written by Saichi, an unlettered but perceptive practitioner of Pure Land Buddhism. In Saichi's words, 84,000 delusions, 84,000 lights, 84,000 joys abounding. As long as our thoughts, feelings, and intuitions come from a limited, finite, and karma-bound being, they are all delusions. This is the first noble truth. This is maybe the hardest thing to accept. One of Buddha's disciples, Ananda actually, one of his 10 great disciples, Ananda was his attendant, waited on him for his entire life. Ananda, of the 10 great disciples, Ananda was the only one who didn't come to full enlightenment in the Buddha's lifetime. He did, though, shortly after the Buddha passed away. But Ananda was once asking a question of the Buddha, and he was saying, now, I accept that all life is dissatisfactory and suffering, but I wanted to ask you, and the Buddha said, stop right there. And he gave an example of how long it takes to be completely at one with this understanding of samsaric existence as being ultimately not worth the candle. And he gave this story, how the infinite kind of times again and again and again and again and again. So it's extremely important. So, Taitetsu Uno, as long as our thoughts, feelings, and intuitions come from a limited, finite, and karma-bound being, they are all delusions. It is not a matter of right or wrong, good or bad. This is our naked reality. They are delusions because they make us see the world from a deeply self-centered perspective, a fact that eludes our normal conscious awareness. We think all this is real. We don't see it as being filtered through our ego. Our myopic vision distorts reality. Hence, our thinking, doing, and saying are invariably flawed and defective, even though we may not admit it. Religiously speaking, delusions arise from the darkness of ignorance, avidya in Sanskrit. Vidya, right? Video. Is without, like agnostic, atheist, without seeing. So ignorance is not stupidity. Ignorance is just not seeing. A Nobel Prize winner in physics can be avidya, just not seeing reality for what it is, may see a portion of it. Delusions arise from the darkness of ignorance, producing insatiable greed and manifesting as blind passion, kleshas. This is the cause of endless pain and suffering. The 19th century thinker Friedrich Nietzsche raised such an understanding to a philosophical level and characterized it as perspectivism. From this vantage point, he undertook a sweeping critique of existing moral values, religious teachings, philosophical concepts as being without any objective foundation. In his Will to Power, he identifies the source of our delusions and their expression in language as follows. So this is Nietzsche. Subject, object, attribute. These distinctions are fabricated and are now imposed as a schematism upon all the apparent facts, subject, object, and attribute. The fundamental false observation is that I believe it is I who do something, I who suffer something, I who have something, and I have a quality. And then Taitetsu Uno again. Based on this fundamental error, we construct a world with words and concepts infused with our emotions. Our life then becomes filled with polarities such as good and bad, like and dislike, love and hate, black and white, mine and not mine, enlightened and not enlightened, ad infinitum. Such is the world of the 84,000 delusions. We are made to acknowledge this life of fabrication when our reality is illuminated by light. This light focuses on each of the 84,000 delusions, making them transparent and powerless. Light is symbolic of wisdom in Buddhism, and this light is none other than the Buddha of infinite light, Amitabha. Since the light is not harsh, cold, and distant, but soft, warm, and proximate, it is felt as a compassionate working. Thus, the same Buddha is also called the Buddha of infinite life, Amitayus. In East Asia, the two are unified into a single name, Amida. When we are made to see our delusions by virtue of compassionate light, we have been touched by reality. No longer are we lost or confused, afraid or angry, insecure or fearful, not because these states have vanished, but because they are revealed to us more clearly, securely cradled within the great compassion of the Buddha of infinite light. Each repetition of his mantra liberates us from our delusions, even as we remain karmically bound to them. This liberation, inconceivable, unexpected, and undeserved, is the cause for the endless celebration of this precious life. 84,000 joys abounding. That's the basic attitude. What we have here with what's called Tibetan Buddhism is the full survival, the survival of the complete range of Buddhist teachings. So Buddhists have a happy history, is that they're not looking at rival sects say and saying they're wrong, we're right. It's not like that at all. Anything that goes back to the Buddha, any pure lineage going back, is it. But it's just that there are 84,000 different types of human beings. In fact, in your own mind, when you start meditating, you see 84,000 different things going on. And it's kind of like a long healing. You may need something at one point and something else at a later point. So it presents 84,000 teachings. Now, for most of us, like Americans, this is overwhelming. It's overwhelming for Asians too. But they have the advantage of having kind of a cultural confidence in this, sort of like we do in Thomas Jefferson, or Abraham Lincoln, or Einstein, or whatever. I don't know anything about that. I saw some article yesterday. They discovered some big black hole somewhere. They didn't even say where it was, and now it's bending reality. And this is like confirming what Einstein came up with 100 years ago. I can't understand any of that stuff, but I have confidence that it has validity. So that's how the Tibetans are, and also other Buddhist cultures. They don't necessarily know all of this stuff, and you heard Kempo last weekend, criticizing Tibetans in that way, that sometimes there's a little bit, faith, but not going into, they want a ritual, but they don't necessarily want to learn how to meditate. So we're all human beings. We all have the same kind of limitations. Lama Tarchin told a story of a great Nyingma master who was teaching on Vajrasattva to a small group, and suddenly stopped, and he said, "You know what? I can take you all to Vajrasattva's Pure Land right now. Who wants to go?" First guy, "Well, I want to go home and tell my wife." The second woman says, "I'd really like to get my daughter married off before." This, that, the other thing. Maybe after the harvest. Nobody went. That's what we are as human beings. But seeing that is wisdom in itself. When we meditate, especially with this meditation that has direction with it, and I don't mean a fabricated kind of thing, but with this understanding, like it says, be mindful of the meaning of the Dharma. This is great for us because it's not some sort of thing apart from us. That meaning is us. And that's what gives us the juice, the motivation, then the pure practice, non-conceptual practice, and then at the end, the dedication. This is a system that has worked. We live in fortunate enough times that we actually have contact with people who were traditionally trained, such as Gar Rinpoche or the holiest Drigyan Chobgan. And of course, that helps us in a great way because it becomes not something abstract, but something you can see and have contact with. When the Buddha passed away, he said, "I will survive in the words," meaning the words of the Dharma. Generally, Americans are anti-intellectual, and when we approach the Dharma, so much is like, meditation and mindfulness, all these good things, but somehow thinking that the teachings maybe aren't necessary, that they're just concepts or one thing or another. So all of these thoughts can be used. Like they say, how do you get water out of your ear? By pouring water into your ear, and then it all washes out. We have to use concepts. We are not beyond all these things. I can't pretend that I'm not, affected, like it says, our ordinary thoughts, like Taitetsa Uno said, that the emotions, I can't get rid of my emotions. Once with Lama Tarchin, I was on his board of directors out in California, and he had people on a 3-year retreat there, and they were always thinking about ways, how do we keep this going? We need to raise some money. And look, Lama Tarchin's a wonderful artist. Maybe we could have he can go around to different schools in California and, art projects and seminars and this kind of thing. And we could raise some money this way. It'd be a good thing. And then someone said, I got this great idea. This one of the guys on 3 years retreat was an art teacher here in Rochester, and then he ended up coming out to Lama Tarchin. We could have him be like the salesman for this, going around, because he was an art teacher, and he will have been out of a 3-year retreat. This is wonderful. Everybody's excited about the idea, except Lama Tarchin's sitting there silently, not saying anything. Finally, someone realized what's going on here and asked him, Lama Tarchin, what do you think about him being the salesperson for this? He just shook his head no. He said, what do you mean? He said, Lama, he was an art teacher. Oh, what did Lama Tarchin say? Too much, I can't remember, too much pride, I think. And the student said, well, what do you mean? What? Too much anger. Yeah, too much anger. And thank you. Yes, too much anger. And the person said, what do you mean? He will have come out of a 3-year retreat. He won't have any anger anymore. And Lama Tarchin said something to the effect that, look, you don't understand how deep the problem is. This is Frank saying you don't understand how deep it is. I'm thinking like a philosopher, Lama Tarchin didn't talk like that. But nonetheless, what he said to him is that anger's in the body. We have created this body of anger and greed and delusion. It's not something that you just take out like you take out the garbage. 3-year retreat is wonderful, but it all depends on motivation, past karma, everything. You keep going. It's not some sort of a merit badge that you get and that you walk around as some sort of special person. This is a complete misunderstanding, not seeing how deep the problem goes. And so this is very helpful because when we meditate ourselves, when we have this kind of understanding from the teachings, then we don't get immediately discouraged. I mean, good grief, when you meditate, it's like they say, this room the air seems perfectly clear, right? But a sunbeam comes in, you see all the dust motes dancing in it. That's what's revealed by the light of wisdom. When we look at our mind, we see just a tsunami of unbidden thoughts, of prejudices, everything. I mean, you know how we are as human beings. We're all smiling on the surface rather. Everyone's smiling and nice. And meanwhile, they're hating their neighbor. And we all have it. We all have it. This is how pervasive and deep the problem is. But the genius of the Dharma is that it's not really deep. It's on the surface. And our nature is deep. And it doesn't go away. We can't get rid of our nature. This is fail-proof. But we got to work it. So, Tibetan Buddhism presents the full range of these kinds of teachings. And to break it down in a very simple way, kind of, the conventional teachings. This is what the Dalai Lama teaches publicly. This is very much 100% what Khenpo is teaching here. The vast teachings of loving kindness and compassion. We're using our dualistic mind. You don't have to throw away your mind, do something different. You can study, practice, think about it, train yourself in that way. Like it said in our 37 practices, there's you hear the teachings, and then you think about them, like studying them, and then you meditate, you grow accustomed to them, you internalize them. Eventually we become the teachings. But there's this process. But then there are the extraordinary teachings. Same motivation, the liberation of ourselves and all. But we call it tantric, vajrayana, whatever. It's using subtle forms. So the conventional teachings are using our ordinary gross forms. We don't have to go anywhere to acquire anything to do this. It's all there. We just keep working it, training ourselves. But if the faith is there, if the confidence is there, one can practice the tantric teachings, which instead of using the gross forms like we do in our conventional way, using the subtle forms, the subtle body that is normally not seen. And in that way, it's said that you can come to Buddhahood in one lifetime, because it's like genetic engineering or something. You're going very, very deep with these subtle forms, which are more useful. I mean, in our mind, if you think, it's using the power of the mind itself. If you think about the mind, I can think about myself being on one of the moons of Jupiter, and it's like my mind, I'm there. It's like limitless. So we're using that, but powered by this tremendous motivation of wanting to benefit others. Bodhicitta, Buddhahood itself. And of course, we fall in that all the time. I think it probably was Philip Kapleau of the Rochester Zen Center on his first trip to Japan. He was with visiting a Zen monastery. and they were there at the evening, and they had an evening ritual. And if I can remember the verse, the monks would chant together, all beings without limit. You remember it, Gretchen? All beings without number, I vow to liberate. Endless my passions, I vow to uproot. Without something else. And then finally, the great way of Buddha, I vow to attain. And I think it was Philip Kapleau and his kind of intellectual Western knowledge, great deal of reading about Buddhism, but at that point, no experience, said to the Zen teacher next to him, do they really believe that? And the teacher said, not in the beginning. So we have to train ourselves. And by looking at all the dust motes in our mind, and we see them arising, we see them going away, they lose that absolute power. When they're not observed, when we're not aware of them, they rule us. We are colonized by our kleshas, by our afflictions. That's what human beings do. All you have to do is look all over the world, wherever it is. It doesn't matter culture, it doesn't matter education, doesn't matter, people are basically ruled by emotions. They're always finding some evil person that you have to fight against or someone to be afraid of, because people don't think and analyze, they just emote. These are very powerful things. And the hatreds that rule the world are truly sad and like samsara, going around and around in circles. It's not the answer. Dharma is the answer. Zen Master Dogen said, this refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is not something that people ordinarily choose, but in the end is the refuge of all. So this is what's been presented here, seemingly through our, like he said, undeservedness. This is the thing. We have Buddha nature. We are qualified. And all the other things that we throw up are all these kinds of reasons, kind of excuses to let ourselves off the hook of following, just looking at our own mind. But in the end, it's all wonderful. I mean, Shantideva says somewhere, compare, if you think about all the suffering that you've had in all your lifetimes, a little bit of difficulty in practicing the Dharma is nothing. Milarepa says, if you could see all the tears you've cried, you would fill the oceans. It's this vast perspective. And that immediately puts things in perspective that has the effect of lessening suffering. When the suffering is 100%, it's like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? This is totally unfair, falling out of the heaven, and why would God do this to me? Or why is the world structured such that it's just such a shit show? It's like the suffering is unbearable. People commit suicide, all sorts of things, so they don't see any way out. But once you have a glimmer of a way out, the suffering is less. It's still 99%. It's no fun. But you can't be 100% anymore. It's that someone lit a match in the depths of Mammoth Cave. It's no longer 100% darkness. It's fundamentally different. And this practice of Dharma, as you go on and on and on with it, it can actually, increase purifications. You can have something, the Dharma, the Buddha said one day he had a headache for 3 days. And he described something that he had done in a previous lifetime. He was a little boy, and someone was catching fish, and he would pick up the fish and just hit their heads, like a 5-year-old, just doing this, obviously not a hugely negative thing, but that's samsara. And so as a result of that, he purified it by having a headache for 3 days in India 2,600 years ago. So these are things that are hard to believe, but you don't have to. You just go from your own experience. When you're looking at your mind, is your life better or not? Do you have more room with which to? Lama Tarchan says, my mind is vast. There's plenty of room to dance. We're not dancing. We're being driven around like sheeple, So it can be overwhelming, the 84,000 teachings. But at the same time, you can look at the result of some of these great teachers. And then you can see the result in your own life with others. A little more patience, a little more openness to seeing solutions to problems. And interestingly, by relying on your true nature, just doing the practice, sometimes these deep-seated kind of conflicts, you don't, by not thinking about it, you actually come up with an answer for it. So sometimes when we obsess about things and we actually we give it more of a reality than it's really there. Whereas if the mind is open and practicing as we're instructed to do, sometimes, the answers bubble up. Meditation is actually very, very practical for your practical life. But that's a side benefit. That's not the reason for doing it. The good things come. It's kind of like epiphenomenon. It's side benefits, but they're still wonderful. It's still a good thing. Okay, where are we now? Oh, I've already talked too much. I've got people waving at me from the peanut gallery. please, please. we have to invest in duct tape, right? All right, so we'll stop there, and we have our annual meeting. We'll do a dedication at the end of everything after the annual meeting, but the annual meeting is going to be pretty brief because I think we have to elect two trustee members, and we've only had two nominations for the positions. So if we were going to do something like the world would do, we just cancel elections and just, yeah. But no, we're going to follow the rules. So anyway, take a tea break and we'll ring a bell and have our brief meeting.
So those of you out there on YouTube, if you want to join the meeting in Zoom, it's open. It's our regular meeting, and you'll see a link to it in the chat.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, for one of our annual meetings. This is not the annual meeting with capital A, capital M. This is just the election of trustees, right? Okay, so this year we have two vacancies naturally ripening on the Board of Trustees. Um, Stephanie Rogowicki and Frank Howard's terms are up. Well, did you look on your ballot? We didn't give you a ballot. It was meaning. But at any rate, yeah. And so coincidentally, those two are the only two nominees that we have. So you can vote for trustees. Yeah, never a discouraging word. So we're going to do a voice vote, raise your hand rather, and we'll do each one individually. If we get one vote for either one, they win. and if you don't want to vote for one or the other, you don't have to. Just don't raise your hand. No one's keeping score. Well, that might end all of our pain. I can go to Arizona and live, be there with the random animals chasing Gar Rinpoche's pond where he feeds the fish. Anyway, all right. So first, we can do this really easily. All in favor of Stephanie Rogowicki. I could just vote myself, and that does it, right? And then Frank Howard. just a little insurance policy there. All right. Let the record show that they're both reelected. Yeah, right. And want to thank both of them for their efforts. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. This is like you think Tammany Hall had nothing over us. Right. All right. So why don't we first any questions or anything, and then we'll just do a dedication this morning. We had this wonderful visit from Kempo Sotram Tenzin, right? Is that true? You think after all these years I'd be able to say Tibetan? It's really something. But yeah, it was so wonderful. I mean, obviously he's just tremendously knowledgeable and experienced, which is great. But he had such a way. Did you notice it was almost like he was having a conversation? I mean, he brought up so many things that we had heard here in teachings a long time ago, but it's like you start to forget with your old mind. And when he said, for instance, I thought it was so interesting because again, from our particular tradition here, it starts with Vajradhara Buddha, direct transmission to Tilopa, Tilopa to Naropa, Naropa to Marpa, Marpa to Milarepa, Milarepa to Gampopa, Gampopa to Pagmodrupa, Pagmodrupa to Jitkin Sungan. So that's the start of the Drikung, is Drikung Sungan. And what's amazing to me is that in that transmission, nothing was lost. I mean, it must have been incredible times, because we can see even in our own times, you have some inspirational kind of experience. I don't mean personal. I mean, like cultural, like all the excitement that was there at Kalachakra in 1997. And yet, everything kind of fades. America likes what's new, they like the new, and they haven't seen this before. And this is great. But that transmission from Vajradhara to Jigten Sumgun is still coming through to us. That's pretty amazing. But why Vajradhara? I remember when I first came across this, where did the historical Buddha go? Where did Shakyamuni Buddha go? Who is Vajradhara? Vajradhara is the Sambhoga Kaya. He's actually a Dharmakaya Buddha. But in the presentation of it, since the Dharmakaya is like space, what can you write? There's no, you can't really do anything. The Sambhogakaya, the experience of infinite bliss, is Vajradhara. So Vajradhara is the Sambhogakaya appearance of the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni. He's the Nirmanakaya. Nirmanakaya is called the deceptive body of the Buddha. And this is one reason the Tantra is so powerful, because the Tantra is actually reality, whereas our bodies right now is deceptive reality. I mean, there's reality there, but it's just heavy. So Vajradhara. And when the Kempo said that, I realized, oh my goodness, yeah, I heard that years ago. And I had even forgot asking the questions, because once you get into it, you kind of, you've settled certain questions for yourself, and you don't necessarily bring them up again. And then I forget to mention them here. And so it can be really challenging for people to come here and listen to me talk. And it's like, what the hell is he talking about? Yeah. So anyway, it was very wonderful though, and Kempo seemed to have such a way that was almost conversational. He was touching base on just all these in this empowerment of the Dakini. It was just wonderful, all the things that he did. But he had to me, seeming such a engaging kind of way of teaching. It was less formal and kind of the formal Tibetan style, which is there, and nothing wrong with it. But he's had a lot of experience, obviously, in the West. Pardon? Yeah, the stories. The stories were all very helpful. Oh, that's helpful. It makes it more accessible to us, sort of, and builds confidence. He's seen all the stuff, and I think that's something that's kind of an education for Tibetans too. I read, for instance, that I don't know if it's still true, but apparently way back when in the early 1900s, we brought all these Chinese workers in for building the Transcontinental Railroad, and that's when Chinatown started in San Francisco. And apparently the colloquial term for America that the Chinese had was Gold Mountain. Because, on the outside, you know how it is. I mean, it just looks like they got people to come from China by people selling America to them, so to speak. And it just seemed like, there was just wealth everywhere. And it's kind of like that. I mean, we look around. I look at all the buildings in Rochester, and their fair market value, and you just say, oh my goodness, it just looks like. But then everybody's got a mortgage. So it's not like it appears. So too for the Tibetans. It looks one way, but it's different. And Garampache, for instance, is so interesting to me because, without knowing English, I'm sure it's the depths of his realization. He just is like always using images and stuff that are perfect for Americans. I mean, I've heard him call empowerment, for instance, it's about freedom. He's talking to us in the way that we can understand, which is really great. Anyway, the meaning's always there. Yeah. One of the first times we had a young Nyingma Lama come to America for the first time, and he was in Rochester, and he was at Writers and Books. And, he was used to Nepal, the cultural kind of styles of Nepal or whatever. And he was giving the traditional teachings on generating bodhicitta, to consider all beings as having been your mother in the infinity of time. And of course, you think about what a mother has done, the sacrifices and everything. And he went through this, and this is, of course, great for Tibetans, Indians, Asians, whatever. But the first question he got was from a lady in the front row and said, "What if you don't like your mother?" And I thought to myself, welcome to the West. We're a little more complicated sometimes. Anyway. All right. So why don't we do, unless anyone has anything else, why don't we do the closing prayers? Very good. All right. So we'll do the white Tara he wanted, right? Either. Okay. All right. So if you go to page 38 in the prayer book, Tara's mantra there for green Tara, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. We'll do a mala of those. And Joella knows the tune. I can't do the tune unless I'm doing it in the middle of the sadhana. Om tare tu tare tu re soha. Do you know it, Gretch? Om tare tu re soha. 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 Om dare du re so. 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 Om dare du re Om Tare Nu, Tare Nu Re So. 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 Om Tare Nu, Tu Re So. Om Tare Nu, Tare Nu 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 Re So. Tare Nu, Tare Nu Re So. Om 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 Tare Nu, Nu Re So. Om Tare Nu, Tare 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 Nu Om Dare Du Dare Du Re So. Om Dare Du Dare Du Re So. Page 37 in the prayer book. Om, I prostrate to her who protects from the 8 fears. I prostrate to her who blazes with the glory of auspiciousness. I prostrate to her who closes the door to lower realms. I prostrate to her who leads in the path to the higher realms. Please guide me always. Continue to protect me with your compassion. Page 32. Om Mani Padme Hum Ri. 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 Gewa di iner du dang. Shen rei ze guang drup jur chik. Drowa chikyang malum ha. Dei sala gomhar shu. Okay, thank you, everybody. Cold day here in Rochester. Now we can go and drink hot chocolate, be warm, right? And now our newly elected trustees. If you have any complaints, give them to Stephanie. Go ahead, Gretch.
Okay. Thank you for that, Frank. Anyway, welcome to our new trustees, newly elected trustees. Anyway, this week we will be doing Tuesday night practice, right? I have no idea what it is this week. Anybody have the calendar, the website in front of them?
It's either White Tara
It's either White Tara or Vajra Kilaya. So it's on the website. Do whatever is that and figure on whatever is listed there. And I don't know, a study group. Will you hold study group Thursday?
Yeah, let's.
Even though he hasn't been teaching,
Yeah.
he didn't teach on jewel ornament.
Well, wait. What's tomorrow? The 15th. So that's gonna be like the 19th. Let's give people a Christmas break. We'll pick up after Christmas, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no study group this week.
Yeah.
And then the following week is Christmas, so there won't be anything. I mean, we will meet next Sunday though, for Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But I know Kempo will not be here because he will be at Ratnashri in Chicago with Kenshin Rinpoche, who's teaching there that weekend. So anyway, but I do want to mention New Year's Eve because that gets kind of lost in the messages going out. We will hold our regular annual Vajrasattva practice Christmas Eve evening at 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
it's the great purification practice of Tibetan Buddhism. And we can purify all our misdeeds of thought, word, and deed from this year. And then the next morning we return at 8 a.m. for first light offerings, where we light 108 candles and offer prayers of auspiciousness for the new year. And then we usually have a little repast, right? Is that the
Yeah.
right word?
Yeah.
A little food together. So we'll figure that one out. The socialites here will have to figure that.
New Year's is very brief, actually.
Yeah, New Year's morning is quite brief.
Just an auspicious prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we better say, now we better end because the snow is starting to blow. We can see it through the windows.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, see you next time.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.